Kia ora. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our strategic decarbonization webinar. Today is really around it's designed to help you understand the strategic value of funding carbon credit projects early on. I'll be your host this morning. My name's Austin. I'm the product and experience manager here at Toy2, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to Emily. Emily is one of our sector managers. She has been working with the carbon credits and with clients at Toy2 for several years now, and is currently one of our sector managers. We have a few other experts on standby here as well. They'll be jumping in a little bit when we get to the Q&A section. Now, before I pass things over to Emily, I'm going to just run through a few quick housekeeping items. We're recording this session. We'll be sending a copy out to registrants in the coming days. We are going to be running a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar this morning. So please use the Q&A function to capture all of your questions as you go. You can insert questions at any point. We'll be answering those at the end. You can also upvote questions if someone's already asked a question you're really keen to hear the answer for. And if we run out of time to answer all your questions, we will provide answers in written form in the coming days. And just one final note, please note that throughout this webinar, we're referring to carbon credits being used in the voluntary climate space. We're not necessarily referring to the emissions trading scheme or similar compliance regimes. And also today isn't about setting up a carbon credit project. It's more about the use of carbon credits from those projects. All right, I think that covers that. Over to you, Emily.
So thank you so much everyone for being here. The carbon credit space is an ever evolving but also ever interesting space. So really happy to share some knowledge in this area. So in this session, I'm going to be talking about the evolving integrity standards within the carbon credit space and how businesses like yourselves can purposefully use carbon credits early on in your decarbonisation journey. So just a little note on us. We're Toy2 EnviroCare. We help businesses achieve credible climate and environmental management certification. We're trusted by leading Kiwi businesses to help deliver measurable impact, reduce risk, and unlock opportunity. So we do also offer an offsetting service to our clients. So as a part of that, we are audited every year by ICROA. So ICROA are the International Carbon Reduction and Offset Alliance, so ICROA. So it's basically ICROA's job to ensure that the way that we carry out our carbon credit services meets the highest global standards for integrity. So we've been working in this space for a little while. So the latest international guidance says that you can confidently use carbon credits as a part of your broader decarbonisation strategy once you've met two requirements. Those two requirements are, firstly, that you've measured your emissions and clarified your measurement boundary in compliance with a relevant standard. And secondly, that you have a robust emissions management and reduction plan. So once you meet those two requirements, you can start to consider carbon credits as a part of your decarbonisation strategy, right? So until recently, Toy2 has mostly really worked with our net carbon zero and climate positive clients for offsetting. So given this guidance, this international guidance, we are offering that service to all of our clients that meet those two requirements. So I guess that's a bit of a shift in terms of, I guess, mentally where businesses are seeing carbon credits fit within their strategy. So I can imagine the first question that you're all thinking, what are the claims, especially when you're using these types of credits earlier on in your journey, right? So there are actually three different types of claims that you can be making when using carbon credits. They are a contribution claim, a compensation claim, and a neutralization claim. Now, the type of claim that you would make is dependent on where you are in your journey and what it is that you're trying to achieve. So let's dive into the claim specifically. So a contribution claim is one that you would use quite early on in your journey, again, after you've met those two requirements of measuring and managing your emissions. And a contribution claim is more of an investment in a low carbon future. And the beauty of a contribution claim is your ability to talk really positively and confidently about that investment you're making while still acknowledging that you are earlier on in your journey. Now, a compensation claim is really more for that, I guess, mid-term. It's when you've started to see the results of your emissions reduction plan, you've started to see reduced emissions, and then you choose either a portion or the remaining emissions within your boundary to compensate with the purchase of a carbon credit. And finally, the neutralisation claim, that's really more used later on in your journey when you have really reduced or removed the majority of your emission sources, and you're really just left with those hard to abate emissions. And the key difference with a neutralisation claim is that you can only use removal carbon credit. So a specific type of carbon credit needs to be used for a neutralisation claim. So you've got three types of claims, and again, which type of claim you'd use would be dependent on where you are in your journey. So let's dive into a bit of an example. So we think this is a really great example of a compensation claim. This is Fletcher Building. So they have a verified science-backed target to reduce their emissions 30% by 2030 from a 2018 base year. As a part of their emissions reductions plan, they had developed this brand new product that's a cement product that has 20% less embodied carbon than a similar product on the market, which fabulous, amazing innovation there. And then they chose to offset the remaining manufacturing emissions by funding high integrity carbon projects through Toito and Varke. So I think it's a really great example because it really shows that stage at which you would choose to use a compensation claim. They have set their targets. They acknowledge that they're still working towards those targets, but they have made some progress, and that's a really good use of an investment in a carbon project to help step them towards meeting their 2030 targets. If we jump maybe into a hypothetical scenario, if we stick with the Fletcher's example, how they might have used a contribution claim. So again, a contribution claim is more early on in the journey. So if we think back to say 2018, they've set their base year, they've measured their emissions, and they have set their reduction plan and set their targets for 2030. They could have chosen at that point to invest in a high quality carbon project and talk really positively about that investment with the acknowledgement that they obviously are at the start of their journey and they have all these plans to reduce their emissions by 2030. So again, a bit of an example of what a contribution claim might have looked like for Fletcher Building. Hopefully, what is clear from those examples is that the use of carbon credits is really just one of the tools in your toolbox when you are looking to reduce your emissions and along that decarbonisation journey. We would always recommend going back to the fundamental inverted triangle here, when you're looking at your emission sources, first looking to avoid the emissions intensive activity, looking then to reducing, is there a way that you can reduce the emissions intensity of that activity if it can't be avoided, and then looking for carbon projects for those hard to abate emissions. We would always recommend that this is continuously reviewed or consistently reviewed. So always checking in. We would recommend annually to ensure that you are staying on track with your targets, but also taking into account any new technology or new projects going on within your business. So when looking to use a carbon credit within your decarbonisation strategy, we would always recommend looking for high integrity in both the credit project itself and the provider of that carbon credit. So when you're looking at the integrity of the carbon credit project itself, you want to be looking for this ICCCP labelled logo. What that means is that the credit has been checked against the Global Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets Core Carbon Principles, the CCP, Core Carbon Principles. The CCPs are 10 fundamental science-based principles for identifying high-quality carbon credits that create real, verifiable climate impact. So again, when you're looking for a project, look for that CCP labeled. And then again, when you're looking at doing this for your business, you want to be checking that the provider of the carbon credit is also of high integrity. So I mentioned earlier about iCroa. It's a business that we work very closely with. Always ensure that your provider has been audited and verified to the iCroa standards. Again, iCroa is their role is to ensure that the carbon credit services meet the highest global standards for integrity. So again, make sure you're checking the project and the provider for integrity. Just a final, I guess, note in terms of what I think is a real opportunity in this space. So we all know that there is a range of types of projects out there, but also locations of types of projects and what have you. So there's a range of high quality carbon credit projects out there. What I think the real opportunity here is for businesses to be particular about the credits that they choose to invest in. And what works really well, what we've seen works really well, is when businesses align the credits that they choose to invest in line with their business's strategy, their goals, and their brand. And it can be a really useful tool in that way. So we would always recommend to be picky about the credits that you choose to invest in. So to summarize what we've gone through today, a responsible business can fund carbon credit projects once they have met those two requirements around measuring and managing their emissions. Authentic claims can build stakeholder confidence, and the type of claim that you're going to be making will depend on where you are in your decarbonisation journey. It's obviously something we can support with if you're unsure. And not all credits are the same. So always look for the integrity standards in both the carbon credit project and the provider of that carbon credit. So I think that's actually everything, and I feel like I've whizzed through. So please feel free to pop questions into the Q&A. More than happy to answer anything, and I know we've got some experts on the line to help as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Emily. Yes, we do indeed have some experts. So we've got a panel at your disposal, everyone. Please drop those questions in the Q&A box. I can see some are coming through already. Please feel free to upvote other questions as well. So we have a panel of us who are going to tackle your questions today. And if we don't get through all the questions or if we can't answer it today, we'll report back in writing in the coming days. So you've just heard from Emily, and I, as a reminder, I'm the product and experience manager, and I'm got a lot of expertise in making claims. We have Subir. Subir manages our carbon credit services and teams. He'll be able to answer questions about the projects, what's going on with the transition in New Zealand. And Stu is our principal advisor on carbon. He has expertise in lead practice on the accounting, the reductions, the credits. Lots of goodness there. So hopefully between all of us, we'll be able to answer your questions. And I can see some are coming through. Please drop them in the Q&A box as we go. So we're going to start with this top one here from Santiago, talking a little bit about carbon credits from high integrity carbon projects through Toitu. And Santiago would like to know, are these afforestation projects on private land? Are they all native forests? If they're not within the ETS, what are the eligibility criteria? How much does the landowner get for these, etc.? So Subir, I think I'll start if you want to get us started on this one. So looking at some of these high integrity carbon projects, these afforestation projects that we have in New Zealand, and talking a little bit more about some of those projects for us.
Sure. Thanks, Austin. Ideally, we would obviously want these afforestation projects to be accepted and approved by ICBCN. And while it's in transition, we have accepted New Zealand afforestation projects that we have held before and that were on our books during the transition phase. So these projects, they need to be on a margin on land, which means that they should not be competing with food producing land, and they need to be permanent forests as well as indigenous forests. So that's some of the basic criteria that we have to accept some of these projects in transition.
Nice.
Happy for anyone else to jump in, but yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know that we always know the answer on how much the landowner is getting for those, but it is definitely a part of the way that the projects are designed is making sure that landowners do get funding for it. That's part of the design of how uh, most carbon credit projects work really is around it's about making sure that funding is getting where it needs to for these projects, whether they're removing carbon through forestation or they're avoiding and reducing things. That's one of the beautiful things about carbon credits is it's getting money where those where money is needed to help us all invest in the systems, the infrastructure, the materials, the wild spaces that we need for our decarbonized future. We've got another question here from Kevin. So Kevin would like to know if it becomes apparent that a company's initial strategy and emissions target is not going to achieve the original target, so it's not going quite as they originally were hoping it would, does this encourage the purchasing of carbon credits as a means to feel better about the company's non-performance? I think we all have some thoughts on this, but Stu, I'm going to throw that one to you.
Yep. For this one, just think back to that inverted triangle that Emily showed, the mitigation hierarchy. It is generally accepted across the discourse that some companies will go off track, and there's a lot more acceptance for being transparent and honest and saying, well, look, we had a planned pathway, we have deviated for various reasons. It might be reasons beyond their control. Technology that they were anticipating might not be coming on stream as fast as expected. Regulatory or policy changes, impedes them actually implementing the actions to actually achieve the targets that they had originally planned. And so by having this option of purchasing carbon credits to make up the shortfall, if that's the strategy you want to take, well, that still demonstrates credible action because you are actually taking a ton out of the atmosphere or avoiding a ton out of the atmosphere elsewhere. One key point to make here, though, is that you keep going on that pathway plan and trying to achieve your targets. And back to that inverted triangle, the note that Emily had is around you're continuously testing that triangle and saying, right, what is hard to abate today may not be hard to abate next year. And so we actually need to be continuously checking and bringing those actions on stream so that you can actually achieve those targets over time.
I think we see that a lot, all different types of clients, all different types of projects, right? Things don't always go to plan, and that's okay. Sometimes things take longer than you maybe thought they would. A really cool experiment didn't go quite the way you hoped. And yeah, it's about keep reviewing, keep checking. Can you avoid or reduce those emissions? And if not, the climate definitely benefits from these projects in the meantime. And that, as we've mentioned before, that funding is getting to really important places that's helping to set up the systems and the infrastructure that we need here. Right, we've got an interesting question here. How do we pick these projects? Sabir, do you want to take that one? How do we pick the projects that we're offering in a given batch of credits?
Sure. So we're referring specifically to New Zealand projects. Obviously, in international projects, we already have a number of projects that are CCP tagged. So while there's only a couple of New Zealand projects at the moment that are in the queue to be accepted by CVCM and CCP tag, we are only using projects that met our rigorous due diligence criteria. And they are projects that we have held before, and we obviously trust them. So that's how we are picking them at the moment. We're not accepting any new New Zealand projects unless they are ICVCM accepted or CCP tagged.
In terms of, I guess, types of projects, though, we are always willing to work with our clients. Again, if you're wanting to use a particular type of project that matches with your business values, what have you, we're always open to looking into a different type of project as long as it meets those integrity standards. So it's something we work with our clients on. So definitely always open to new ones that come up.
Yeah, clients have come to us, right, Emily, with, like, oh, I'm really looking for something in this region or that has these sort of
Exactly.
co-benefits, maybe is around these themes. Is there something at all? Yeah. And the amount of work that happens behind the scenes to make sure that these projects assess our due diligence standards as well as, external credentials as well. It's something we're really happy to back any of the credits that we're backing. And if something, comes to light later, we'll help you with those. Um, this is a good question. I don't know that we have seen any so far. Are there any credible blue carbon credits on the market yet? Has anyone come across any of those? I think that might be a bit early.
There's some out there. I know we've done due diligence and they didn't necessarily pass our due diligence
Mm,
at this stage. But international blue carbon projects are there.
mm.
Um, yeah,
It's definitely an emerging space, and I
yeah.
would imagine we're going to start to see more things there, but none on the books just yet. Great. Nicholas asked us a question here. Is there any work going on to improve the sequestration and the value of native forests? That's a great question. I think this is part of a lot of the projects that we're working with in New Zealand, just inherent to the way that these projects work. Stu, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, in various angles, right? So it's in landowners' best interest. This is applicable for both New Zealand and the international context. It's in their best interest to look at different ways to increase the resilience of the forest so that it's actually, going to remain there over the long term, and also enhance the sequestration rate, weed and pest control, fencing around the area, strategic planting to increase the biomass and therefore the carbon. Linked to that is a whole range of initiatives or work that different entities are doing around the quantification of those removals, remote sensing, more site-specific biomass sequestration rates. And by having that quantification accuracy refined, that gives the landowner a lot more incentive to say, right, well, here's my more site-specific measurement. I can see those removals going up, and that will correlate through to more carbon credits in the outcome.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right, next question. Tim would like to know our view on whether a company should select a carbon offset that is based in New Zealand versus overseas. Um, let's
Uh,
say, is anyone? Yeah, Sabir, do you want to dive in?
yeah, sure. It's totally up to the company. I mean, obviously, we back the credits we have on file. They're high integrity credits, whether international or New Zealand. It depends on, some companies, they have offices in certain regions, so they want their credits in that region. So it's completely up to the company, what your budget is, and we can work within that with you.
Hmm. Emily, I'm sure you've seen some client examples where because of the nature of their work or because of the story that they're telling, they might want to make one credit or another. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do find too that businesses don't necessarily just choose one
Mm,
project. They actually split their investment across they choose to invest partially in New Zealand because they really wanted to support that home project, but they also wanted to invest in this other project because of again it aligned with their company values. So there is the option to yeah, split the investment. It doesn't all have to go into one place. And again, it can really help with that story if
mm.
you're able to talk about all of those things that you're investing in.
Yeah. And I think just a reminder that emissions go into the atmosphere. Carbon credits are benefiting the atmosphere. The atmosphere is global. It doesn't matter where your emissions are occurring and where the carbon credit project is. The mechanisms that are in place around how these things work are designed so that it doesn't matter if your emissions occurred in New Zealand, but you're buying an overseas credit or vice versa. It's still a good, legitimate thing as long as you're working within the really high integrity voluntary carbon space. Right. So we've got another question here. That's just curious. Does this mean that commercial forests, even if FSC certified, don't qualify for carbon credits? Um, Stu, do you want to take that one on why and how maybe just any forest isn't necessarily immediately eligible to be a carbon credit project?
Can you give a short answer?
Mm,
The short answer is if it meets the eligibility tests and criteria of an issuing carbon credit standard, and as Sabir and Emily have highlighted, that standard needs to be assessed and approved under ICVCM so that it spits out CCP labelled credits. Well, the forest can come through as a credit. I can't comment any further in terms of the commercial forest and the FSC sort of scenario.
mm,
But
yeah.
that's the fundamental principles across any removal project or avoidance project is, does it meet the criteria of the issuing carbon credit standard?
Yeah. Yeah. I think just don't remember that just because it's a forest, just because it's a tree doesn't equal a carbon credit by default. There's a lot of mechanisms in place to make something an eligible, legitimate carbon credit and the way that that works as a trading mechanism. And so forests are good things, especially when it's the right tree planted in the right place. But it doesn't necessarily equal a carbon credit by directly. All right, this next question is a good, fun, sticky one. So, legal risks in using carbon credits. And in the question, there's a link to a recent legal case in Australia where an energy company lost a greenwashing case for using carbon credits and claiming a carbon neutral product. And I think there's a lot of other examples. Litigation is something that we monitor ourselves as part of monitoring lead practice. And you're definitely seeing an increase in scrutiny on both carbon credit projects and the types but also the way that they're being used and the claims that are accordingly made about those things. And that's I mean, you'll remember Emily shared some claim examples with you earlier. You can make different types of claims. And if you're making a claim that's around a carbon neutral type claim, those are inherently some of the most risky types of claims to make. We often will be recommending to our customers the safe claim that they can make based on their circumstances. So how are you measuring? How are you verifying what you're working on? What are your reduction strategies? Are you reducing the emissions that you're claiming to be offsetting? Or compensating for. That's a really common thing that we see in a lot of both lawsuits and other kind of advertising standards authority type complaints. If you're making a claim that you're compensating for emissions, but you're not able to also show that you're working on reducing those emissions, that's often a common way that those complaints and lawsuits are upheld. Um, and Inherently less risky is a contribution style claim where you're not necessarily trying to claim that those things are balancing each other out, but that you're just funding and investing in these things and paying it forward into the world and helping fund our decarbonized work. So those are inherently less risky. When you're wanting to make a compensation style claim, an offsetting claim, and particularly if you're wanting to use the word neutral, that's where you're getting into much more risky territory. You really want to work with a provider in this space like Toy2 who's able to help you navigate. And if you really want to be making a clear claim, you're going to want to go down a certification route and get certified under a defined label and make claims about that label. So rather than just a generic carbon neutral claim, you want to be really precise and specific. The Commerce Commission has some great guidance on environmental claims and carbon neutral as just a generic term is one of the things that they ask people to be really careful about. Instead, you should make a clear, substantial, defined claim like a Toy2 certification, for example, if that's what you're interested in. If you're wanting to make claims, talk to your provider, someone like Toy2, on what does that mean? What's your situation? What would be the least risky claim for you to be making right now? Right. I think that is us at time. It is 10:30. We do have some more questions, so we'll be reporting back to everyone when we share out the recording with some further answers for you. Really appreciate you spending some of your morning with us today or whenever you're watching this recording. Thank you to my panelists for sharing your wisdom with everyone today. And we'll be getting this recording out in the coming days. Thank you so much. Ka kite, everyone.